torch all of that?
Mm-hmm.
How about we're just done with self-doubt and second guessing and the self-criticism and the impossible math that there's never any answer to. And we just like trust ourselves and see where that goes.
I'm like, I'm not going to be punished by having like human cycles. Like I'm not going to allow myself to be punished for this.
Yes. How are you doing with all of that?
Good. I was thinking about the concept of like tuning to kind of like what's pulling you, like when you feel like that kind of gravitational pull into something new. And there are times in life where that does feel really easy, and it feels like kind of like an easy and like blissful transition into like something that's more aligned for you. And I'm reflecting on parts of my life where I've felt that, and then kind of like the thought of like, is it going to stay here? And as all things do in life, they continue to cycle and change. And I feel like personally, I'm just reflecting on the last time that I kind of felt like there was an intense need for that kind of miraculous change. And I'd say it was about 7 years ago. And so I'm just kind of like thinking on that 7-year cycle and how much has happened in that 7-year cycle. And I'm definitely just like recognizing that that is the point where I'm at now. It just feels very different. Like it feels very different than it did when I was like, 18, 17. So, 19, I don't remember, but it's interesting to reflect on like, because when you think about everything in that kind of like fractal mindset of like, how can something be so reflective of a different time in your life, but also tangibly feel so different at the same time? So that's kind of what's on my mind after thinking about that on a personal level.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, like reflecting into those like personal growth cycles. It's like I said there, it's like nature teaches us how to change, and it's like our own lives. It's like part of the like phony radio station is that it's like we aren't natural, that we're somehow different or separate from nature, like from the phases of the moon, like the spinning of the planets. It's like we are natural, and our experiences, our lives, they show us those same changes, as above, so below. It's like we can look at, it's like, okay, so the moon, the nodes come back to where they were, where they are now, like every 18 years. And also like, if you notice in your life, it's like, what are your cycles of change? It's like, how do you change? Because it's like, you are the universe. Like you are the universe. And there's as much cosmic wisdom in you as there is anywhere else.
Yeah. And it seems like there's been times in life as I reflect that like life has been inviting or asking for like expansive change, and then there's times in life where it's asking for more of like a grounded presence with what is, and like not needing to change things, but definitely like kind of using that personal sense of discernment and like feeling into what's happening right now. I feel like I'm coming out of a point in my life where I was really being asked to sit still with what's happening and not try to change anything. And now I'm getting to a point where it's like, stop sitting still and start changing things. So that's where I'm feeling right now. And I've always been like a mathematics and physics minded person. And so I just absolutely love anything that kind of puts that into a perspective that can be so simple and so macro and so applicable to all levels of existence. And so I love that your mind works that way too, because it's nice to think that way.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I appreciate that coming from you.
Yeah. I mean, some of my, like, I would say the earliest transformative memories that I personally have in my life was when I moved across the country in high school, and I was very isolated and alone, and it was like peak teenage hormonal nihilism phase, you know,
Oof.
and I didn't have any friends. I moved to a school with like 5,000 people, and I'm not shy, but I'm not like a typical kind of outgoing, popular kind of kid when I
Mm-hmm.
was younger. So it was just, it took me a long time to find my people, and I was very
Mm-hmm.
lonely for a long time. And that's
Mm-hmm.
when I dove deep into my obsession with like physics. And it was a
Mm-hmm.
very like direct pathway to things like lucid dreaming and meditation and stuff. And it was
Mm-hmm.
kind of like opposite. Like I had a lot of sciencey, nerdy friends, but I
Wow.
was always like the weird one that was like, let me take these
Wow.
concepts and think about what that means for like interdimensional beings and like, you
Yeah.
know, um, and something that happened at that time that just really like, you know, solidified that is like the physical experience of it all, like not
Mm.
just sitting in my room every night and watching hours of Nova documentaries on YouTube, but
Mm-hmm.
about like particle physics, but also like experiencing it
Mm-hmm.
for myself. And I think that's why a lot of people who don't have like the mental desire to grasp those kinds of concepts in that
Mm.
way, like it just it needs to be an experience thing for a lot
Yeah.
of people. But I'm the kind of person that I like to start with the information too,
Mm.
and like,
Mm-hmm.
have that associated with the experience. So
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
yeah,
so with you.
I loved the sine wave representation. That brought a totally new level of understanding to me. And I love the concept of like the increasing momentum at different points in
Mm-hmm.
that sine wave. Because especially
Mm-hmm.
when we think about like time, I think, we all have the collective experience of time speeding up and slowing down.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we kind of like a lot of people in modern society like tend to just kind of like not think about it, just be like, oh, it's
Mm-hmm.
just your head or like whatever. But like when you
Mm-hmm.
really think about that, that's really significant that you feel like time literally slows down and speeds up.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's really, and the fact that we can feel it together, like when
Mm-hmm.
we're sitting in the depths of winter, it's like you can
Yeah.
feel it. Or even in like I think about the menstrual phase and everything,
Uh-huh.
like not just menstruation, like obviously probably most of us who menstruate have felt like our menstruation is taking too long, or it's not
Mm-hmm.
ending, or it's like
Mm-hmm.
we're sitting in it for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
But I find that with ovulation too a lot. I get kind of like exhausted from my
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
ovulatory phase. I'm like, all right, can we chill yet?
Yeah. Yeah. Like last month, last in gathering, I did a whole thing about time and how it's like time is a construct and it has been used by the phony radio stations to keep us in like grind culture, to keep us in like time scarcity. Last month we were working on resonating on just like, is time different for you these days as more and more of us are kind of like waking up to this, to our truth of like what we are. The experience of time is different. We're getting more and more willing to be like, yeah, it changes. Like it's not just like, it's not a constant thing. Our experience of time is it's just like, it's malleable. It's malleable. And then I'm with you so much on like the exhaustion of the ovulatory phase, exhaustion of like the full moon, like exhaustion of daytime, exhaustion of summertime. And it's like, I feel in some of my other in gatherings, I was talking a lot about like the cycle and how the expressed nature of like ovulation, summertime, daytime, like that like light, that's like the masculine phase of the whole cycle. If you like kind of going from masculine into feminine, and then like from the darkness of the feminine, anything like the masculine expression is like a singular expression. It's like there's like individual fingers on a hand, and then like the circulation goes back into the oneness and then expresses again. So the exhaustion that I feel, it's like the patriarchy. It's exhausting because it's like that grind culture, that like incessant day, that like, and then it's like I feel that in my body too. When it's like the ovulation phase, it's just like it's intense. I'm exhausted, and like, thank goodness for our natural phases. And it can feel disorienting because it's like we're always changing, but that's just the truth. Like, it's like we just are. Like, everything is always changing. So it's like, I love how, like, as we're talking, it's like you're kind of like rocking, you're kind of like swaying. It's like everything is moving. It's like, let's just like vibe with it because it's moving anyway. Let's drop the pretense of like incessant day, patriarchal, nonstop production. It's exhausting, and it's not natural. So this is like, that's one of the things that I'm like advocating for, is like, it's a revolutionary act to take rest. It's a revolutionary act to like decline to participate in incessant grind culture. It's like, it's perfectly well and good to do expression, to be masculine, to have daytime and summertime. Like, all of these things are amazing. Ovulation, all of these things are amazing. And then we need to return. Like, there's like, it has to be in balance.
Yeah. Like, there can come waves of this sense of frustration. And I think the frustration is a really honest frustration that kind of pushes against that, like what you're talking about, like the grind culture, and how like everything is expected to be constant, and how like when you look at like comparing something like a sine wave that goes on forever sustainably through all of time and space, you know, and these cycles that continue to kind of pulse and breathe throughout all time. And then when you compare that to, you know, these economic growth curves that we are expected to kind of uphold in our society, where we're expected to either be, you know, product or labor or the brains behind everything. Like, we're supposed to exist on some point of that hierarchy. And I know for myself, like, I've always been a little bit anti-establishment, and it's something that's caused me to like, you know, push back a lot, and sometimes like have to do things the hard way because I refuse to like conform to certain things. But even after like I initially kind of had my first kind of what I would consider like a spiritual awakening, I was also a teenager and a young adult who had never had a job before. So there were times where I had to work these jobs that were very, you know, customer service. I'm a 19-year-old being hired. And there was this one time I got very close to walking out of an orientation of a job that I really needed in the moment, because they told me that everyone started off on probation, and they used the word probation, and the word probation just sent me on this like rage spiral, which I think is very like, it was a very like honest feeling of pushing back against that, because I'm like, why would you use that terminology? You know, like, why do we need to make someone feel right off the bat like they're being watched for any like lacking? Like, if I take a 20-minute break instead of a 15-minute break because I'm bleeding in the bathroom, I'm going to be punished. Or if I'm late because I was driving slow in the snow, I'm going to be punished, you know? And there was just something about that like filled me with so much rage. So instead of walking out and quitting, I wrote a really angsty poem about it instead of listening to my onboarding. And so I still worked for a few months, but that revolutionary spirit is always on fire.
Yeah. That's
and I think
so
like
cool.
everyone experiences it, like, you know, people, anyone who's been either pressured into or just done any kind of like modern kind of 9-to-5 style job. Like, I recently experienced that for the first time.
Wow.
It was a similar feeling of like everything in me wanted to rebel against that expectation. And in a way where I'm like, I'm not going to be punished by having like human cycles. Like, I'm not going to allow myself to be punished for this. And that ended up with me having to leave that environment, which, you know, for
Mm-hmm.
me was fine because I'm a musician. I can make money other ways. It's like, it's fine. But it made me frustrated for people that don't have like that kind of easy acts like that.
Yeah.
You know, for me, it was a direct thing. I was already doing music. So I'm like, okay, fine. I guess I don't need this.
You didn't need it. Yeah.
Yeah. But I, you know, I knew a lot of people who were in that environment who had kids to take care of. And, you know, we're single moms and just needed to do that for a while. And so I think there's space to be held for the idea of, you know, allowing yourself to kind of answer the call to kind of like that tuning fork idea of like a higher frequency. But I also just like feel like there's so much honesty in recognizing that like we do live in a system that like makes it harder for people to make the choices that allow them to get to that. And then it fosters a lot of anger and makes people, you know, even more prone to engaging in that disconnection and disillusion. And so I think there's just some question and space to be held of like how do we support each other like really truly to help each other get out of that, because like for us it's like we sing together, we support each other on our little artistic things, and it's so wonderful. And
it is.
I'm so grateful that we're able to do that. And I want everyone to be able to like follow the path of their soul with ease, like without all of these very real obstacles and barriers in like the I guess physical realm, you know. And I think that's something like kind of a collective, like there's a push and pull going on between like the society that has been created and upheld for so long, and then the kind of, I guess, for lack of a better term, like the vibration that we are like going towards. And I think it's interesting too, and sorry to go all over the place, but I think energetically and intellectually we're able to move so much faster than some of the physical reality around us. And I think that can cause a lot of like confusion and frustration. And I know at the beginning of kind of my spiritual journey, like I wanted to like run so fast towards that light that I kind of forgot the world behind a little bit. And so, yeah, it's like, I think about sustainable cycling a lot, and like, how do we do that in our physical bodies, but also as a society and through these like bigger cycles, like month cycles, year cycles, 7-year cycles, whatever other, you know. I think that's where astrology can be a really good place to direct our attention sometimes. And so I appreciate the invite here, because I have been very disconnected from the astrology for many years, just my personal cycles. So nice to connect, tune in.
I took some distance from astrology too, just because it's like it can be divisive, and it can also be, I think it can kind of serve as like a false idol, you know, like people get caught up in the information of it. And and then it's like then I just feel like it's a fool's errand, just like anything can be, like whether it's like money or religion or like, you know, education, like it can pull you off of the track. So I'm coming back to astrology now, and I'm really leaning into that, like as above, so below, where it's just like what we are noticing in the sky is like reflective of what's happening within and between us. And so it's like, I'm just like, I'm not like groveling to the stars to like, please teach me a thing. It's like, I have this. And then like what you were saying about like, like cycles within cycles, and like sustainable cycling, and like what can we do to like support each other in this revolution and this like collective lifting, you know, because like we are lifting, and it's also it's not always a walk in the park, you know. And it's like the shift that you made to like leave the 9 to 5, you know, it's like that particular shift was like maybe not like ultra challenging for you. But it's like shifts like that, like, you know, so many people who are leaving their 9 to 5, who are leaving their long-term relationships, who are like leaving their country. Like people are doing huge, big shifts. And it's like, and people are facing loss like over and over and over again. And it's like that much change can be traumatizing. And also it's like people are feeling like what you're feeling too. It's like when we touch into a higher frequency that's like closer to our resonant frequency than like what we've been living in, what we've been tuned into, it's like those other frequencies that are contrary to our true resonant frequency get more and more uncomfortable. And I'm seeing that happening a lot. And like you're saying, it's like energetically and vibrationally, we change a lot faster than the physical world does. And certainly a lot faster than like the creations that we've made. And we're just like, this will be like this forever. It's like that.
Right.
It's not meant to change. It's not like, it's not an organic cycling structure. It's like, it's a solid institution, you know? So more and more people are just like increasingly incompatible with those systems. And you're right, like the systems, because they're a product of the mindset that they were built in, those institutions have baked into them like divisiveness of many, many varieties. It has baked into them like scarcity. It's just like that. When that's just what you believe, that's just what you think is, everything that you create is going to be colored with that, you know? And so it's like we're interacting with these institutions, and it's like it's feeling more and more dissonant. It's more and more uncomfortable. We're more and more like desperate to get out, really.
Yeah.
And then like that anger too, where it's like, this isn't working for me or anyone, you know, it's like that feeling. And sometimes like I want to support each other with the challenge of change. And also I think that oftentimes like things don't change until they are uncomfortable. And like that's been true for me, you know, and I think it's like, I think we're getting part of like a squeeze that helps us to realize that it is dissonant and that it's like, it's so uncomfortable that it is worth the risk to like leave the 9 to 5. Everybody's journey is unique, but there are some things that's like, it is an abundant universe. Fact. Like it is like wealth disparity is definitely happening, and that's very not cool. And yet it is an abundant universe. And so it's like, and the truth of the abundance of the universe is more true than the wealth disparity is permanent. Like it's
Right.
just like that can't last. And I think it's like when we are going through our personal revolutions, and when we're like in integrity with that, like when we're focused on that, I really do think that it's like we're taking our power back from those institutions. We're focusing into truth, which takes our power back into an infinite place, which also gives it to others. So it's like when we're focused on our own personal revolutions, like we are supporting our kinsfolk.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, recently I've just been hearing a lot of kind of like buzz, like how kind of different concepts cycle through our collective consciousness through either the internet or conversations we're having, or just kind of like themes that come up in different kinds of like energy work and stuff. I've been hearing like a lot of talk about community and what that actually means, because I feel like that's been like, people are talking a lot about like, oh, well, we need more community. We need more community. And now I'm seeing people talk about, okay, guys, like, what does that actually mean? Like, what do we mean when we say we want to uplift and support each other? And, you know, what kinds of things can we do both like personally, spiritually, you know, and also tangibly in the towns that we live in and for the people that we're close to physically, you know, by us. Cause there's so much power there to like just things like singing with your friends or gardening with your neighbors. I think a room full of people who want to listen to music together is just one of the most absolutely magnificent things about being alive.
It's magical. It's so magical. Yes.
It is. And whether you're listening or making the music, it's just there's something so true about that. And I know like we have friends here where we make music together kind of as a form of almost like catharsis and connection. Like it's not really made with the intention of going anywhere, but it's more of just like kind of that improvisation of like tuning into like the collective vibe and singing together and seeing what happens. And
I love that.
And there's something so nice about that, because the people that I sit with in community like that, I don't typically understand them or agree with them completely. Like there's not that like intellectual resonance. But then when we start playing music together and when we start singing together and connecting with each other on that like level of consciousness, it's like none of those things really matter, because it's like the barriers of language can sometimes keep us separate from each other. And I think that's one of those things with nuance, you know, because language can also connect us. And especially when you meet someone who kind of like matches you on an intellectual level, language can be really fun, or language can also, you know, pose challenges to our worldview, which is also very necessary. But just getting into those spaces of music or meditation or dance or creativity, it's like, that's definitely my favorite way to kind of like, quote unquote, escape like the limit.
Yeah, but you're totally right. Like about language, like that's like, I've talked about that in some of these in gatherings too. It's like language is an abstraction, and it's like for social purpose. And depending on what you consider socially beneficial, that purpose skews and biases the language, which gets into a lot of confusing, complex, problematic things. And all of that on top of language is an abstraction. So it's not the thing itself. It's like a finger pointing at the moon. It's not the moon. But then like when we're like singing together, like moving together, like eating together, even, you know, it's like, that's the thing itself. Like we're doing it. And I think that like vibing together, it's like sometimes we can use language to support vibing together, but it's like, let's get clear here. It's like what we're doing has less to do with language and has more to do with just like the vibe. And you and I are using language. That's what I was going to get back to. I remembered. Yeah. Because it's like you're saying, it's like that like the intellectual pathway, it can be beneficial. It can also be counterproductive, you know? And you said that it's like you have found in your spiritual journey that like learning the information and then having the experience has kind of been like a process for you. And it's been like that for me too. And I wouldn't think that it would necessarily be like that for everyone. There's myriad different experiences, but I've found that for me too. Part of what's been really instrumental in my spiritual journey has been channeled texts, which a couple years ago I would have thought was like really weird, like really out there. And now it's just like, you know, you can't argue with results. Like what I've found through some channeled work, it's like I experience like a higher vibration in a way that it's like, it's something different, which clarifies for me that like radio frequency kind of it even exists. Like before I encountered like the channeled stuff, it's like I was just kind of like within my own bandwidth, and like, you know, I would have a good mood and a bad mood. But then after experiencing like the channeled stuff, I was like, this is like it's a different like tonal experience of reality. So I was learning like intellectually, verbally, which I find beneficial, but it's like the experience was like happening simultaneously. And also like, even when I wasn't reading the content, you know? So
yeah.
it's like, yeah, the intellectual pathway, it's like I like it, you like it. It can be really problematic. And it's also it's just it's not the thing itself. It's still not the thing itself. It has to be experienced.
Mm-hmm. And like you said, with like kind of like the concept of idol worship, when it's like when you are using language to define something and like insisting its correctness almost, that's when it can just really be, it's like misplaced wisdom. Like I think, and then I've found that some people kind of in this spiritual collective, like I've noticed different paths that people take, and sometimes overly intellectual people who start out learning all this information and intellectualizing it and trying to like find answers tend to then kind of like flip-flop into a rejection of wisdom and almost like a fear of like thoughts and ideas, and almost like a I need to trust energy 100% and like never have thoughts because the thoughts are misguiding me. And I think that like being able to integrate like the experiential and the kind of like wisdom aspects, it's an important thing.
You're saying like, what does it mean to like actually create and foster community? And like, what would it be like to support people who are like, they're going through the throes of their revolutionary like birthing process, and our collective also, it's like it's fractal. It's like our species, our collective, our communities are like people. It's like an individual who's like having a hard time with change. It's like our collective is like going through this tough time too.
You know, it kind of reminds me of like a labor concept, like when you're like giving birth, it's like the most painful, contracting, and like exhausting, kind of like miserable, but also gateway to like good, you know, where it's like you know that your life's about to change, like, and you know the most perfect thing is about to come into your life that you created, but the actual experience of getting there is so uncomfortable. And it's like, I know that for my birth experience, because I have a child, I gave birth, and you know, I gave birth in my bedroom with people I really trusted, and it was so easy and supportive and simple, and I felt like, you know, everything was good. But I'm thinking about like a lot of people's experiences with birth is like someone's yelling at you to like do this thing, or someone's like putting this fear into you of like this pain is a bad thing, or this contraction is putting you in danger, or you need to go faster or get, you know, and I know with that personal experience of like the physical giving birth, it's like the only way that it comes any easier and faster is to surrender to that process of pain and contraction. And that can, you know, it can be really challenging for us to do that because we have so many resources of dissociation and running away from our pain and blaming, you know, kind of the environment or the world for that pain, instead of like saying, yeah, you know, this really sucks, and I want this to be over. Like I do genuinely want this to be over.
I'm not going to deny that.
Right. Because I remember when I was giving birth, I like one of the things that I said was like, I want to take a nap. I hate this. And don't ever let me forget how painful this was. But even though that's what I said, looking back, it's like, it was the best experience of my life. And I knew that while it was happening too. Like it wasn't miserable. I wasn't scared. I was just tired, and I wanted it to be over because it was uncomfortable, you know? And I think it's so interestingly human, you know, that we have that like collective resistance, and we want to fight each other and blame each other and distract ourselves from where we're going, you know?
I mean, it's like that. Like I was thinking, it's like, how do we support each other, like to like foster these community type energies, and also like how do we support each other in like the experiential component of like, spiritual ascension or just like growth, like this revolutionary process? How do we support each other in like the experiential aspect? And then like what you were saying there, just like about like birth and like your birthing experience and everything, it's like that feels like that's the way. Like if we could be those friends in the room with you, who are like allowing you to be human, like allowing it to be terrible for you, and like what and allowing it to be like this miraculous transition for you, like not trying to shush you when you're like, this is extremely painful, and also not trying to like shame you or rush you or sedate you or anything like that, but just like the encouragement and the faith. And like I think like maybe what we can do for each other in community and everything like that is just like support the calm. It's like one of a source that I draw inspiration from is like the Unity Church. And there's a phrase that I learned in the Unity, which is hold the highlight. I think that's what it is. And it's like, I'm thinking about that, like in the room, like when you're going through these like labor pains, it's like, what would be the best presence, And I'm just thinking that it's like somebody who's calm, somebody maybe who's been there before, like somebody who has full faith in you and full faith in the process and is like not concerned, and also like kind of like keeps orienting you too. It's like if you're trying to dissociate, if you're trying to like distract, it's like stay present, and not in like a like don't look away because this is like like none of those like terrorism kind of like, it's like you have to watch the news otherwise you'll be uninformed. It's like, what is it that we're trying to focus on? It's like let's keep the main thing, which I think is like our truth, our resonant frequency. So it's just like keep like calmly reminding folks to like orient to that, and probably not like verbally reminding them, but just like by being that presence in the room that like helps to kind of cue that orientation.
It's an important thing to be able to do for each other, is like find those moments of humanity, whether that is a deep conversation, whether that's making someone laugh by being silly and ridiculous, whether that's like, even just like thinking about strangers, like when I take my son out in public and he's just so funny and full of joy and pure, and like the way that people will interact with him, and I can tell that their whole day is changed because their interaction with him. Yeah, like those little things,
Yeah, you're so right. I mean, it's like it sounds like love. It sounds like being loving, and like making that like friendship connection, I'm just thinking like like there is a lot in life that's overwhelming. There is a lot in the world these days that's overwhelming. There's a lot that we have access to that is like distracting and traumatizing, concerning, like addicting. Like there's like our attention and our energy can go into a lot of places pretty easily. It's quite accessible. But I'm just thinking like I would really like to cultivate the like integrity of self, to be loving in that like friendship way, like that real genuine friendship, like being that person in the birthing room who's like, who believes in you, that's like calm and is like, you've got this, and just like feeling that, and like, because that would be enough, like that would be enough to be like that in the world. And like it would be challenging enough with like all of those like distractions and the stressors and everything like that, and just like focusing on that cultivating that loving presence. That feels like that's I want to be leaning into that, I think.
And I think it like all goes back to that concept you were talking about with like allowing ourselves to resonate with, you know, our paths and, you know,
Yeah.
again, for lack of better terms, like our correct frequency.
Yeah.
And, you know, every time I've done something in my life that is wrong, I know it's wrong before I know it's wrong, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think about that a lot with like past relationships in my life where I always had this like very dramatic feeling deep down in me. And I like, um, always felt like sad because I always had this self-awareness when I was with a partner that I loved so much that I knew that it was going to have to end because I could just feel, you know, deep down, I was like, I
Yeah.
know that this isn't right. But, you know, that young and naive and in love version that was scared of not being in that relationship, it's like, it's really hard to accept something that you know is true. When you don't really want to go into the unknown necessarily, but
Yeah.
you know
Right.
you and that can be really hard, like, you know, and I think supporting each other through that is important because we all have these like
Yeah.
triggers in us that no matter what we do, like everything cycles back around. You know, you can
Right.
ascend out of something and become a higher version of yourself, and then something else comes back around to trigger it, and you
Yeah.
continue to go higher. And that was something that I always found very, very resonant about that concept of like, you know, you start at the bottom of that cycle and you like work your way up and you keep ascending time and time again.
Yeah.
Find yourself at points where you reflect your younger self and you find yourself thinking, well, what's the next version of that? Like,
Yeah.
what is
Right.
me going to look like when I'm looking back down at myself now
Yeah.
from the next point, you know? And it's good to keep
Yeah.
that kind of perspective.
What I'm feeling in this like expansive time, the lunar nodes, like the eclipse in the south node in Virgo and then the north node in Pisces, it's like the south node often indicates like what the past is and like what we're kind of leaving behind, and then the north node is like what we're leaning into. And I'm just feeling this energy in me, which I feel is like I could see that in the nodes as well. But what I feel is like leaving behind uh the self-criticism, the second guessing, the self-doubt. If you're going to err in one direction or another, like trust yourself. Like there is no right or wrong. It's not like assume that you're right and the other person is wrong. Like it's not that. It's like trust yourself that you know what's right for you and that like you are acting like the best that you can at any given moment, because like that kind of like confidence, it's like that's a positivity cascade.
Right.
It's like
Right.
so many people, I think women in particular, like fall into this like self-doubt, second guessing. Like we spend so much time just like doubting ourselves and like checking the math on like, are we good? Did we cross all of our T's and dot all of our I's? Are we good enough yet? And I'm just like, how about this equinox season, this eclipse time? How about we just like torch all of that? How about we're just done with self-doubt and second guessing and the self-criticism and the impossible math that there's never any answer to, and we just like trust ourselves and see where that goes?
Yeah.
I'm wondering, like, what is it that you feel with this? Like, you're saying that it's like you're feeling this like wind of change.
Absolutely. And for me, the change is like it's very like on a physical level. Like the past 3 years of my life have been very focused on family and kind of this like creation of a family and just being very present for that process and like really kind of giving of myself and sacrificing a lot of things to establish that And I feel like this point in my life and this transition and kind of that like rapid acceleration feeling, like I've been having a lot of inspiration about what I want with my life, which I feel like is something that's really important as, you know, a mom who's still pretty young. And like, you know, I have a lot of personal desires in my life, and just really tuning back into like what makes me. Because I feel like pregnancy and postpartum was really kind of like one of those dark nights of the soul where it's like I intentionally stripped back everything that I kind of decorated myself with, in a sense. Like I wanted to kind of strip everything down and see, like, without any of this, without all of these yoga practices that I was doing, without this, you know, ideology that I had coming out of college, and without all of that identity, what am I? Like, what are my values when I strip everything down? And I feel like I got really clear on that. And part of that was a really painful process of like, you know, losing relationships and strengthening other relationships through really hard and honest conversations. And now I feel like I know who I am again. And now I just want to, like you said, like kind of like move into that resonance of like, you know, things that are inspired by what I want to do for myself, and not necessarily like fitting myself into other people's ideas and projects as much, which is something that obviously I want to keep doing. But the focus for me right now is like, what do I want? And for me, I also, and I've been working on my first full length poetry collection, and I am working towards a publication. So that's like one of those things that's kind of like speeding up really rapidly in my life, because this is something I've been working on for 7 years, and that 7 years keeps coming back over and over again. But I started this collection 7 years ago, and so now I'm in the process of putting it together and finishing it. And so that feels like a very like life's work kind of feeling, and I'm really excited to see the culmination of that. So yeah, that's for me personally, and focusing on my health, like, and I think that's like postpartum was very hard for me, and hormonally it's like after about 2 years is when you start to get back to a kind of regular hormone cycle, which is a long time, you know. That's a long time to be affected so intensely by postpartum hormones. And I think like I was both affected really intensely, but also allowed that to kind of keep me from myself a little bit, because I was just like, everything just felt different, you know. And I'm ready to not care as much if it feels different, just do it anyway, and just kind of, you know, one step at a time. Like, instead of just ignoring the fact that I've, you know, feel kind of terrible and can't do all the things that I used to be able to do, just like doing little things anyway, and maybe different things, you know. So that's what this feels like for me, is like reminding myself like, hey girl, you've done this before. You've done all of these things before. It's just a different time, a different timeline, and a different, you know, it's the same thing, different time. So I'm excited to just keep leaning into that energy.
That's cool. That's cool. I feel very much that it's like things are feeling pretty unlimited in a lot of ways, which seems counterintuitive, like given some of the things that you see in the world too. But it's like there's this movement, you know, things are moving so much right now. And it's like, I think it's right and good for us to set our sights high and just like shoot for the moon and expand, because I think that there's like this big wind of momentum that's going on. So I'm excited for you. I'm excited for you to get out there and do those things. I think it's a really great time for it.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think like, you know, do you ever find yourself like preparing for something, but you don't know what you're preparing for? You know? Yeah. And I feel like I've been feeling that lately, and there's like this horizon in front of me, and I'm like preparing for something to come over the horizon, but I'm not sure what it's going to be yet, but I want to be prepared for it. It reminds me of when I was in college. Every single day I would sing It's Only a Paper Moon over and over and over and over. I don't know why. I don't know why that song. It just, I sang it every single day. And it was like my jazz practice every day. And I don't know why. I never had any desire of like doing anything with it, but I just did that every day. And then it's like, after I did that every day for many months, then I like got, an offer to join a jazz band. And it's like, when you don't expect something, but you find yourself just doing it anyway. Like I never thought I would ever publish a book, but now I can see that like beyond the horizon. I'm like, actually, if I just do this, it's inevitable. Like once you start doing something over and over again, it is less in the field of possibility and more in the field of inevitability. And I'm definitely ready to just start speaking that into existence more.
Oh my God. Yes. Yes. Let's leave on that quote. It's like a mic drop. Yep. Ella, it's so fun to hang out with you.
Yeah, I'm glad we got to see each other again another night in a row. I'm so glad it's in a very different context.
I know. Like singing some great songs for a great audience.
With all those boys, all the guys, and the music, and now we're just girls hanging out and talking. So it's perfect.
It's so good.
In space.
It's so good. It's so good.
One last thing I want to mention is, when it comes to all of this energy and space, and, I notice when you sing, you do a similar thing to what I like consider when I sing. And it's like, when you're singing a note, you're putting your hand where the note is, like a note, it like, and I just love that so much, because when I imagine music, it's not just something that's coming out of an instrument, it's something that's taking up all the space around you, like being able to play in that space.
Yeah, you're like surfing in the sound. Yeah. Yes.
So I'm glad we have all these shared experiences. And
Me too. I'm so grateful for you. Thank you so much for being here. So much love to you and to your little one and to your wonderful husband. You take good care. You have a good night.
You too.
Talk to you next time.